Oh, good God, ladies and gentlemen. It is now the foul year of our Lord 2025. M3, for those of you from the Warhammer 40k franchise, and somehow we're all still here to suffer through it. How unfortunate for us all. As I was thinking about what this video should be about, I actually kind of had a hard time deciding what to cover. Like, should I just do another best or worst games of 2024? I mean, not only is there already a billion of those, but believe it or not, I'm actually trying to not just make strings of videos where all I'm doing is just complaining and little else. So I didn't want to just focus on the negative. Plus, I don't think I really played many games from 2024 in 2024. Mostly only like Super Nintendo stuff or retro PC games. So I didn't think I really had a lot to say about that either way. We will do a brief segment on that anyway, first up, just because I think, in the interest of completion, if nothing else, we should talk about it. Plus, I like seeing what you guys are all playing and having a discussion about that. But what are we going to do instead? Well, instead, we're going to talk about vibes. The gaming industry and vibes. No, I'm not in my Gen Z era, don't worry, but I do think that the industry may be poised for some big changes in the coming year or so, and I think that would be fun to talk about, and naturally, of course, get deep inside of. Before we get to all that, though, let us do the end of the year thing and briefly discuss my top games of 2024. As some of you know, I usually like to rank games like that simply by which ones I played the most. Problem with that, though, is that if we go by that metric, my top game of the year is the same as my top game of the year from 2023. The same as it was in 22, all the way back to maybe 06 or 07. It's going to be classic World of Warcraft. Not because it's my favorite game amongst all others, not necessarily because it's quote-unquote the best, or because I think it's the best designed or the best looking, etc., but simply by virtue of it's what I end up playing the most, I think. I spend most of my time in front of my PC, whether it's for work, my band, audio engineering stuff, freelance work, making these videos, playing games, whatever. My PC is pretty much where I live, and the game that's low on resources that's most often running in the background somewhere that I subconsciously tab over to when I need a brief break from something is, well, it's World of Warcraft Classic, for better or worse. So by time played, once again, my game of the year is WoW Classic. What about you guys? What game did you play most this year? What game did you put the most hours into, regardless of year of release? Let us know in the comments down below. As far as which 2024 games were the best, we're not going to talk about which ones were the worst, because I think, well, among other things, we'd be here all night. But as far as which ones are the best, or at least from my opinion, I'm going to give it to, in no particular order, Stalker 2, Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, the Dragon Quest III Remake, and of course, Space Marine 2. If I had to give it to only one game that I think had the largest impact both on myself, my gameplay experience throughout the years, and its area of the industry, I'm probably gonna have to give it to Space Marine 2. Absolutely. My 2024 game of the year, Space Marine 2, without a doubt. What about y'all? As always, let us know in the comments down below. Moving on, now that we've got that out of the way, for our main story tonight, we are going to talk about the games industry moving forward. Oh, such fun, right? Many of you may have noticed that among the few legacy media outlets that I pull from consistently is PC Gamer. No media outlet is without flaw, of course, least of all any legacy media outlets, but PC Gamer is one of the few, I think, that has maintained a relatively decent amount of journalistic integrity, comparatively anyway. Maybe it's because they only cover PC games and there's not nearly as much money in that, and as a result not as much corruption as in the entire console market. I don't know. In either case, they occasionally from time to time put out genuinely insightful, thought-provoking articles. And right now is one of those times. Perfect for an end of the year wrap up / going forward outlook video. The genesis of this piece is that while games on the whole seem to be getting better, at least marginally, I could probably debate that a little bit, the industry on the whole seems to be getting worse. Now, that's definitely a perspective that we can relate to over here. Our view here at the channel being that modern day infinite growth business practices and over monetization by ruthless, exploitative, rapacious corpos who cared nothing for us, our hobby, or our games has all but ruined and gutted the very soul from our once favorite hobby. And in our ceaseless quest to seek, if not a remedy for this terrible affliction, at least a way to slow or worst case understand it, this PC Gamer article provides an excellent opportunity for some discourse. So let's do that. Let us discourse. So, titled, After 2024, it feels like the games industry is poised for a vibe shift, or maybe a reckoning. This is penned by Wes Fenian, who is this dude? Senior editor? Yeah, senior editor of PC Gamer magazine. Subtitle, This year's trends and hardships are setting up 2025 to be a year of big change. Now, right off the bat, yes, like I agree, but also not in any way that the trends and hardships of 2023 didn't set up 2024 to be a year of big change and hardships, and well, we saw how well that went over. Anyway, 2024 has been a year of incredible video games. It has also been bloody just like 2023 before it. There have been thousands of layoffs, dozens of studio closures, failures from companies that we once assumed were too big to fail, things like GameStop shutting down Game Informer, fuck you Game Informer, go to hell, you go to hell and you die.
You go to hell and you die!
The only other surviving gaming magazine in the US, as its CEO honed its corporate strategy to tweeting Trump 700 times in a row, is that true? Wow, that's amazing. As you guys probably know, but for those of you who don't, when it comes to politics, I don't care which side you're on. I hate all politicians and I hate all politics. I don't care who your guy is, I hate him. Elon Musk threw in with the games are too woke crowd. Oh, good. Surprising no one, I think. Good old Elon Musk, cringe lord of the fucking internet. As I reflect on the year and try to hold these two thoughts in my head, it has been another great year for games and another terrible year for the games industry. Another more nebulous one is floating around the edges, harder to fully grasp. So let's stop right there. What do you guys think about this summary, this summation of 2024? I mean, of course, factually he's not wrong, right? But has it been another great year for games? I mean, if all you're measuring it by is did a couple games come out that were good, that were positively received by large amounts of people, I mean, yeah, if that's all you're measuring it by, then sure, great year for games. Again, not so great for the industry, or rather, I see this whole thing of conflating the industry with the well-being and material conditions of game industry employees, I'm not sure I really agree with, because largely I say fuck the games industry. I don't care about these companies, their CEOs, or the C-suite execs that run it all. If anything, the people that I'm concerned about, or the area of the industry that I'm concerned about, is the human one. The human cost. What is the human cost of bringing us all these so-called great games? At least up to now, it seems to be pretty freaking high in terms of people losing their jobs, layoffs, studio closures. And that way, if you are going to conflate it with the overall health of the industry, yeah, it's been pretty fucking horrible. So anyway, this guy continues. He says, it's been another great year for games, another terrible year for the games industry. Another more nebulous thought is floating around the edges, harder to fully grasp. And it's something like this. And after yet another year of good games but bad times, the mood is changing, reaching an enough of this shit threshold that could begin to rumble the status quo. And that's the rough conclusion I have come to after straining to human centipede, all of these 2024 events and more into one monstrously fused thought. So again, we'll stop right there. So I think we agree, right? 2024, a couple good games came out, right? Definitely, whether you're into Zelda, RPGs, action games, weird roguelike card games, whatever it is, I think we can all agree a couple good games came out, right? And I think we can also agree that at the same time, many people who did not deserve it got absolutely completely fucked over by the corpo end, right? I think we can agree on that. But the thesis here is that because of this, we have now reached a point where the mood is changing, reaching an enough of this shit threshold that, in this guy's words, could begin to crumble the status quo. What do you think about that? Do you think this is enough? Do you think that this is all that it's going to take to get some actual change? If you were to look at our politics and the general state of our country, I would say it's gonna take a lot more than just a couple people losing their jobs for any sort of great sea change in the game industry. But we haven't gotten to this guy's list of evidence yet, so let's move on to that and see what we think afterwards. So he's basing this conclusion that so much stuff has happened this past year that 2025 has got to see some significant change as a result. And here's his summary of the major events that the industry saw in 2024. Roughly 15,000 game developers were laid off. There are far too few open roles for the industry to retain that talent. Next, right-wing reactionaries fueled a renewed hate campaign against wokeness and DEI in gaming. Oh God. The eternal comedy of us all, with consultancy Sweet Baby Inc. taking the brunt of the fire. Any remaining goodwill around Microsoft's acquisition spree curdled with the blundering closures, blundering is right, of Arcane Austin and Tango Gameworks, two extremely talented studios that paid the price for corporate balance sheet BS. And man, if there was ever a phrase or two or a bullet point that really just nailed home our entire perspective on the industry here, it's that one right there. Two extremely talented studios that paid the price for corporate balance sheet BS. Absolutely. And they just happen to be two of the largest ones around Microsoft's acquisition. As we all know, there are plenty more that died in the exact same way for the exact same bullshit reasons. Next, Balatro spawned copycats nearly instantly, reinforcing how quickly and eagerly developers hungry for a hit in the crowded Steam marketplace will pounce on a proven idea. And that, I think, is not only correct, but I also appreciate how it's phrased, right? It doesn't say spawned copycats because developers are eager to make great games that people find fun and develop large audiences. No. They said reinforcing how quickly and eagerly developers hungry for a hit in the crowded marketplace will pounce on a proven idea. And that's exactly right. It's all from a revenue perspective. It's not from a hobbyist, how can we provide our customers with something fun perspective. It's from a revenue perspective. Next, after layoffs, years of internal struggles, and declining interest in Destiny 2, Bungie seems poised to be totally subsumed by Sony even after releasing a strong expansion. This goes back to that video that I did, I don't know, a couple months, weeks ago at this point, about the death of Bungie, in which I said, and I'm pretty sure I was not alone in this, that this recent shenanigans, this is the death knell for Bungie. Sadly, seems like that is bearing itself out. What a fucking bummer. Next, Concord's flop to the tune of 200 million. Jesus, sometimes I forget just how much money Sony spent on that stupid game. That all of us, from the very beginning, from the very first image they showed of that, everyone was instantly like, nope, pass. But no, of course, in their infinite hubris, Sony pushed forward anyway, insisting on spending $200 million to eventually close not just the game, but the poor studio that they forced to make it, bringing discourse around the risks of AAA development to a fever pitch. Again, the idea that it should have taken something like that to bring the discourse around the risks of AAA development to a fever pitch is kind of laughable. I would have thought that the fact that the Final Fantasy VII remake was turned into a 3-part series should have been enough to pretty much say all you could ever want about the risks of AAA development, but whatever, I digress. Next, roughly 18,700 games were released on Steam. That's freaking insane, by the way, up from 14,300 in 2023 and 9,700 in 2020. According to Steam's end of the year review, only 15% of player time was spent in those 2024 games. Yeah, because that was going to be my next question. Great, 18,000 games released on Steam. And do we have any data on which ones were not total shovelware and gimmicks and just exploitative gotcha nonsense? Now that is something I'd be interested to see. Moving on, next lists even good games and established franchises are struggling. Broader game sales reflected the same challenges, with only 3 of the year's top 10 games in Europe releasing in 2024. Again, I think that is yet another nod to a story that we did a little earlier, the Final Fantasy problem. What the hell is happening to Final Fantasy? Now, in fairness, it could probably be said that that's a little bit more simple. What's happening to Final Fantasy is less an issue of the overall industry or the financial economic climate around video games, and more of an issue of Square Enix insisting on trying to make Final Fantasy like this big tentpole product when it was only ever really like a niche game. But anyway, for more on that, you can find our Final Fantasy problem video link down below. Next, they say Intel had a catastrophically bad year between mass layoffs, borked and underperforming CPUs, and a dismal outlook for future production, spelling a gloomy future for competition versus Nvidia, AMD, and ARM. Now that I can't exactly speak to, but I will say that Nvidia pretty much running the table on GPUs right now is never gonna end well. Next, Helldivers 2 proved new live service games can still be enormously successful, and it did so by eschewing the usual approaches to roadmaps, battle passes, and more. That is very, very true. Bobby played a shit ton of Helldivers 2. He absolutely loved it. I think it's great as well, and just its reception speaks for itself, right? And just once again, more evidence flying in the corpo face of, hey, if you just kind of make something fun, it usually is enough to make sure you get your money. Maybe it's not enough to ensure you get all of the money in the entire universe, but it's enough to make sure you get enough. Now, whether or not a corpo or a developer is gonna decide that enough is enough, that's another matter. And lastly, Apex Legends proving that even with years of experience, game companies will still totally screw up their monetization in ways that will predictably piss off players while attempting to achieve unrealistic profits. Now, if that is not the perfect little cap to this list, I don't know what would be. Because if there is anything else that really defines our times, like predictably piss off players while attempting to achieve unrealistic profits, I don't know what it is. You could probably boil down what I feel is the entire main problem with the game industry to that sentence right there. Doing things that predictably piss off players because you are attempting to chase and achieve unrealistic profits. That is the story right there. Maybe we'll make that the thumbnail or something, I don't know. But that is the story of the game industry writ large for the past decade or so. And it's, I mean, I understand this dude thinks that all of this is gonna end up with, everything coming to a head and change occurring. And I think at first when we started doing this, I wasn't sure if I agreed with that. Now, at the end of this list, I am sure. I agree with it, but I disagree with the timing. It's gonna take many more years of game companies pissing off players while attempting to achieve unrealistic profits for us to get any sort of change. They only just getting started exploiting us, baby. And with that, we move on to the next section titled Primed for a Shift. Starts out saying, I don't think the games industry is having the kind of epiphany that, were we on the Titanic, would see us spinning the wheel just in the nick of time to avoid the iceberg. I think we already hit the iceberg a while ago, and that he's absolutely correct. To be specific, it happened the moment the market cap on the games industry got so big that we started talking in terms of hundreds of millions of dollars instead of just tens. Anyway, he says, I think we already hit the iceberg a while ago, and more people on board mid-sync are finally like, hey, whose fault is it that we hit that freaking iceberg? This sucks. Yes, people like this channel have been screaming that for years and years and years. He continues, I've never seen so many people more frequently loudly express some version of the same core feeling, the system is broken. 15 years ago, I don't remember a near unanimous response to layoffs or studio closures or a massive AAA game flop being, this is the executive's fault. Why don't they get laid off or take a pay cut? Well, yeah, that's because 15 years ago, the industry wasn't this big, and as a result, stuff like that didn't happen. Sure, it happened few and far between. It happened occasionally, but it wasn't the matter of course that it is now, that it is in any industry, any and every industry once they get to a certain size. You see it all over the movie industry, the TV industry. Now it's in the games industry. Why? For the simple fact that it got too big. This is what too big to fail looks like. It's not too big for you to fail. It's not too big for a company to fail. It's too big for the executives on top who have all the money to fail. Just like banking, just like the 2008 financial crisis. Did the bankers or the people that fucked over all those home loans and stuff like that, did the people that originally fucked the entire housing market in 2008, did they fail? Oh no. They got bailouts from the government. It's the people who lost their houses that failed. It's the people that got laid off that failed. Okay, just so we're straight on that. That's why this wasn't happening 15 years ago, because the industry wasn't quite big enough. He continues, there are even more dramatic echoes of this shift building in our culture beyond games, with alleged United Healthcare CEO shooter Luigi Mangione, Free Luigi, became a symbol for an entire country's frustration with a broken healthcare system, and goddamn right. A million social media posts declaring the system is broken or that game CEOs should be fired instead of their staff won't necessarily lead to proactive change. That is absolutely right, unfortunately. But I've never felt like gaming is more fed up and ready for a vibe shift. Again, he's correct. Gaming is fed up. They are ready for a, as he so adorably puts it, a vibe shift. But the thing is, Americans talking about their healthcare have been fed up and ready for a quote vibe shift for years. Americans fed up with their government have been fed up and ready for a vibe shift for years. Americans fed up with their jobs or their lack of jobs or their lack of good wages have been fed up and ready for a vibe shift for years. That doesn't mean it's around the corner. I would like to think that is what it means, but it doesn't. How long until everybody is Luigi Mangione? I don't know, but at least in video games, it's probably going to be a little while longer, sadly. He continues, as explored by The Cut a couple years ago, a vibe shift is the moment a once dominant social wavelength starts to feel dated. Well, thank you. Now we have official words to that excellent term. Vibe shift. Oh God, I want to die. It is a malleable concept more directly aimed at broader fashion and pop culture, but if you've been playing games long enough, you can probably identify the eras or trends popular enough to permeate gaming culture so thoroughly that they became guys, forgive me for saying this, a vibe, suddenly ubiquitous. He goes on to state these supposed vibes in the gaming space. Let's see if we agree. The indie gaming wave, first on Xbox Live Arcade, then on Steam. Yeah, okay. Everyone making a World War II FPS? All right, yeah. The overwhelming number of brown and gray third-person cover shooters? Okay. Yup, so far not wrong. The year of the bow. Everyone making a MOBA. God, man, that was horrible. That was truly repugnant. God, I'm so glad we're past that. Single-player games are dying, quote-unquote. We're still a little bit in that era, but we're coming out of it. Dark Souls upsetting AAA game design conventions for a decade. I don't know about a decade, but they definitely did upset some people for quite some time, which is naturally something that we're always in favor of over here. Dubstep everywhere. Yeah, that's another kill it with fire. Free to play is the future. First funded by loot boxes, then by battle passes. Yeah, I can't deny it. Definitely a phase, one that we're kind of still in. And the year of Luigi, wow. I approve of that nomenclature, but that's pretty bold, especially for a PC Gamer article. Prime for a comeback in 2025, the one I suspect Nintendo won't appreciate. Yeah, that's probably definitely true. We now come upon the next section, which is entitled So 2025, or Going Forward, What the Hell is Going On? That list could go on, and back to the era of Sega does what Nintendo don't. My sweet summer child, what an amazing, perfect era that was. For most of you, you hear that phrase, it probably just makes you think of like summer vacation. At least that's what makes me think of. Anyway, I'm fucking old. Each was a dominant in gaming culture until it wasn't, when a vibe shift came to sweep us all along to the new thing. If a seismic gaming vibe shift is coming, then it'll be driven both by the fallout of 2023 and 2024 and the major events of 2025, many of which we can already see coming. Nvidia announcing new graphics cards for the first time since its meteoric rise to a $3 trillion market cap on the back of AI-cemented gaming hardware as a tiny portion of its business. Nintendo's Switch 2 will release with a similar design to the original based on rumors testing whether a spec refresh will keep selling by the truckloads. I'm of the opinion that it absolutely will. I mean, shit, if Nintendo managed to do what they did with the original Switch based on tech that at the time it was released was already 6 to 7 years old, which now is 14 years old maybe. If they could do what they did with tech that old, I mean, shit. If I were Sony, I'd be a little nervous to find out what exactly they can do with tech that's even a little more recent. Like, shit, if the Nintendo Switch 2 plays PS4 Pro quality games, that's essentially everything that's on the PS5, plus all PS4 games. Yikes. Microsoft's recent "This is an Xbox" campaign will continue signaling its shift in priority from first-party hardware business to third-party publishing, which I think is also, that's probably accurate, effectively bringing an end to the Xbox versus PlayStation versus Nintendo dynamic. Which, I mean, if you really think about it, that dynamic ended when Nintendo, you know, took that hard left into the Wii territory in 2006. I don't really think that was ever much of an era. Like, the GameCube, was that the only era where Nintendo was trying to compete directly with them? I think so. Anyway, Ubisoft's future likely hinges on the success of Assassin's Creed Shadows, which means if I were a bet man, I would not be betting on that. With buyout talk circling what was once one of the most formidable publishers in gaming. And you know what? If that's true, good riddance. I can't think of the last time Ubisoft put out something even remotely decent. Get them the fuck out of here. I don't care. Grand Theft Auto 6 will likely set a new high bar for open world games. That seems likely. I don't really care about Grand Theft Auto games, but, you know, fair is fair. That seems likely. Inzoi giving The Sims its first real competition in ever. I don't know what any of those words mean. Someone who is more knowledgeable about that stuff, maybe. Comment down below. Bungie's Marathon, and to a lesser extent, Arc Raiders serving as bellwether for the viability of extraction shooters. And maybe this is selfish of me, but I hope that signals the end of them. Am I the only one who is disappointed when I found out that, oh, hooray, Bungie's remaking Marathon into an extraction shooter? Like, was I really the only person that was bummed out hearing that? I don't think so. TikTok's potential US ban dramatically shifting where and how younger players learn about and discuss games. I'll go on the record right now, that's not happening. It makes way too much money. There's no way we're shutting that down, especially with the guy who's going to be the next president. Like, there's no way we're going to voluntarily kiss goodbye all that money. Not a chance. The outcomes of current AI lawsuits shaping how much creative labor tech companies are allowed to steal and profit from, or more likely what minuscule fines they'll have to pay to keep doing so. Yeah. More likely is absolutely right. They're not going to punish them at all. I mean, shit. You know, we all know that, like, for example, child labor is illegal, right? Take it one step further. What happens when somebody like McDonald's is caught exploiting, like, 8-year-olds to make fries? Or Tyson's Chicken is caught, like, throwing 12-year-old bodies into the meat grinder to try to, you know, clean up all the chicken parts. You know what happens? They get fined. That's it. No one goes to jail. No one gets in any trouble. No legal issues. They get fined. And usually a paltry sum at that. Like a multi-billion-dollar company will get fined like 10 bands. So don't get it twisted. Current AI lawsuits are going to be nothing but eventual minuscule fines. Nothing more. Sega and Capcom both resurrecting beloved and long dormant old properties, signaling a more Nintendo-like approach to their franchises and fandom. Well, we can only hope. Lastly, major live service launches like Crimson Desert, Dune Awakening, Project Ethos Splitgate 2, and Delta Force now in early access, either pushing the old standby games off the charts or flopping to the tune of hundreds of millions. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's gonna be the latter. None of those Crimson Desert, Dune Awakening, Project Ethos, Delta Force, no. I'm, again, going on the record right now, all of those are gonna flop. Maybe one will do well. Maybe one. So he goes to wrap all this up saying, the stupidly simple strategy. More people than ever are now vocally and angrily drawing the line between the corporate decisions to endlessly develop certain types of games with the layoffs that happen when those games inevitably fail, and as more and more of them do fail, spoiling the big bets that executives made years ago will arrive at a fork in the road. Again, you guys see why I chose this article. There's a lot of stuff that we talk about a lot. Either big game companies begin to loudly and publicly start to pivot, changing their marketing strategies to highlight more personal artistic creations, deliberately invoking inspirations like Baldur's Gate 3, pushing new ways to monetize their games other than battle passes, promising a less tiring and more creative alternatives to seasons as an endless churn of new stuff. Or we just keep the rudder locked in place, drilling further and further into that iceberg. Nothing has to change. The vibe can continue while Ubisoft as we know it dies. Megacorps buy up more and more studios, then shut them down after a single failure. We can keep on like this, we'll lose more talent, sure, but there will always be new bodies for the grist mill. But it seems to me that maybe in 2025, maybe in 2026, enough people are going to be well and truly sick enough of all that to start turning the wheel just a few degrees. And there you have it, guys. Noble sentiments, all, I think, but I mean, sadly, I think he is underestimating just how resistant the establishment capitalist corpo landscape is to not just change, but to any sort of financial fuppery, you know what I mean? Like, these corporations are institutions, and they've been institutions for decades and decades and decades. It's gonna take a lot more than a year or so of us being like, hey, BT dubs, this fucking sucks. Could you do something else, please? It's gonna take much more than that. I mean, I would like to think that it's not, and that we're on the cusp of big changes to the industry, but, yo, as you all know, the industry is billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars. It's a huge, huge, huge entity. Nothing like that turns fast or at all, really. And if and when they do, it's certainly not at the behest of the regular crew. Like, let us not forget, corpos and institutions like them do not operate by consensus or some sort of democratic ideal. They operate based on what the people at the top say, and that's it. So that's my take. I agree that the industry is getting more and more greedy, rapacious, exploitative, misery capitalist focused, but I disagree that we're gonna see any change anytime soon. Eventually, hopefully, but definitely not 2025, I don't think. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments down below, as well as let us know whether you liked this video. Was it long? Was I rambling? Did it suck? Did you think it was fun? Please be sure to tell us. And remember, even boldly going into 2025, we love you today. We love you all the way. And we will catch you next week for much more subversive sarcasm and, of course, general shit talking. Happy New Year, everybody. We'll see you soon. And hey, you know, as a thing, maybe we'll do this. Maybe we'll do this for the new year. If you liked the video, maybe click the like button, comment, subscribe. Subscribe to your fucking boy. We love you today. We love you all the way.
Woke up, smoke up, blunt, then I pass out. Pass out. Woke up, what up, smoke up, blunt, then I'm back down. Back down. What? Yup, woke up, smoke up, blunt, then I pass out. Pass out. Woke up, what up, smoke up, blunt.